And I'm just going to hand it over to Sharon. She's going to talk a little bit about just what was covered a little more in detail about how do you engage IEP team members and parents during the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So here's a few comments from parents that participated in a traditional IEP setting. It was nice that the district talked about my child's strengths as well as his challenges. It made me feel that my child was a student, not a problem. The district had so many people there that I felt I had very little time to talk. They were nice to me, but I felt as though I hardly got to say anything. I appreciate that the case manager kept the meeting focused on the goals.
I was quite nervous about how the meeting would go on, not being face to face and not being able to read body language. However, I felt it was more organized and to the point than it is in person. Everyone was better at taking their turns speaking and taking the time to listen. It felt more cohesive. Overall, it was a good experience. This was a first-time parent participant in a virtual IEP meeting.
And here's another virtual IEP participant comment. Over the course of the last couple of weeks, we have been able to host IEP meetings with very good parent satisfaction through the use of Google Meet. One school person presents the IEP to the group and reviews the IEP as we normally would at an in-person IEP meeting. Parents have been very receptive and comfortable with our process, with most parents stating this was more or less the same as meeting in person. And that is from a special education director.
Thank you, Daniel. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what goes on during the virtual IEPT meeting. And Daniel, would you be able to roll that video clip for me?
Yes.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
That's right, carry on.
My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year because.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. So I particularly love that clip. It's an older one, so some of you may have seen it before, but this is the reality that we're living in. We are all in a virtual setting now. Interruptions do happen. Don't freak out if you do get interrupted. That was a newscaster with millions of people watching. He handled it very calmly, just waited for his children to exit the room and then just continued on with his broadcast. So similar to an IEP situation, it's okay if your child pops in or if a pet makes an appearance. Don't think of it as a distraction or a barrier. It's another unique opportunity to make a connection with your student or with the family. You can introduce your child, introduce your pet, and then just go on with your meeting. As much as you can, minimize the distractions that are around you. Turn off notifications, find a quiet spot in your house, notify other family members that you're going to be holding an IEP meeting. Also be aware of your surroundings and what meeting participants can see. Some platforms allow you to blur out the background, which I've found to be the easiest thing to do. Otherwise, if you don't have that feature, just, for me, I wouldn't want to be sitting next to a pile of dirty laundry or have my team members and family be able to see what's in my sink at the moment. So again, if you do have an interruption, maybe your dog is barking to be let out and you need to get up for a minute, just announce your absence, make it quick, and get right back into your meeting. So another thing you want to keep in mind is to introduce all the team members and then just talk about their role in the student's IEP. So for example, you might want to have the occupational therapist say something like, "Hi, I'm John Smith, the occupational therapist. I help your child by assisting with developing fine motor skills such as buttoning and zipping clothing, handwriting, and keyboarding." Just to humanize the situation that we're all into, just check in. Ask families how things are going, ask the student how things are going. Give everybody a moment to share what their current reality is. If parents are okay going first, allow them to do that. Also, just review with the parents what the timelines are that are going to be followed. Ask if they received information regarding their rights. If not, just provide them with a brief summary and then follow up with a document outlining their rights. So during this time, it's probably also a good idea to set some ground rules or norms, because things are, again, very different in a virtual setting as opposed to being in a face-to-face meeting. So examples could be all team members agree to speak respectfully to one another, mute yourself when you're not speaking, allow one person to speak at a time, speak directly to your camera, not to the computer screen. If possible, just remind team members to slightly exaggerate your nonverbals, so your gestures and facial expressions. And for audio-only meetings, be sure that participants identify themselves by name each time they speak or ask a question. The link here, it was taken from the Kansas Department of Education, but they did list out a few examples of possible norms that can be used during a virtual IEP meeting. As it was stated earlier, sometimes a virtual meeting can take some additional time due to the very many different variables. So due to this, it's really important to stay on topic and just be mindful of the time. You might also want to ask a team member just to serve as a timekeeper or designate someone that's good at redirecting conversation to steer everybody back on course if we do find that we're going off topic. So in addition, keep in mind that while you may not see a student during a virtual meeting, there's a good chance that he or she could be somewhere within earshot. So as you would with any IEP meeting, just keep the content focused on the student. Use the time to emphasize the strengths and positives on the student. You're going to have to address concerns, obviously, but just make sure that you're doing those in a way that is respectful. So we want to try to avoid reading the IEP word for word, because that's going to be a fast way that you're going to lose participation and engagement from all of your team members, including the parents. You just want to summarize and highlight the information being presented in each section. In a virtual meeting, verbal details in parent-friendly language become more important due to the lack of nonverbal communication. So you want to check in frequently with members to ensure the understanding of the key parts of the IEP. You're also going to want to make sure everyone knows what page and section you're on. So be sure to include the parent in any discussions that are taking place. If at all possible, do not mute the parent at any time. This could send an unintentional message that the parent's opinion or voice is not important. And just remember that these engagement strategies during the meeting are going to be a lot more effective if the pre-meeting strategies were also completed. So for example, it's easier to stick to the highlights of the IEP if the team members have already had a chance to look into the details by receiving a copy of that IEP in advance.
And here's a few more comments from a traditional IEP participant. There was no one that I could connect with. All the professionals took over. Another one, during the IEP meeting, the teacher explained to my child in terms he understood the progress he made, and also talked to him about goals and objectives so that he'll know what he is going to be working on during the coming year. So one where the student was engaged. And then the last one, parents may need to feel safe and heard. Sometimes when the power of one parent is strong, it can be very uncomfortable. All professionals need some training in dealing with difficult conversations.
Thank you, Daniel. So again, just remembering to keep participants engaged. Use this as an opportunity to make connections with students that can be present. Oftentimes in an in-person meeting, students are really reluctant to attend their own meetings. And if they are there, they don't feel comfortable speaking up in front of a room full of all their teachers and service providers. So in this situation, since many of our students are very comfortable in virtual environments, you know, they're using Snapchat and TikTok, and if they're video gamers, they're connecting that way. A student may be a lot more likely to attend. With older students, they might feel more comfortable speaking up or even leading their own IEP meeting if you're running a student-led IEP. So it's a lot less intimidating to see your teachers on a computer screen than it is sitting around a conference table. So use this opportunity to build some connections with the student and their family. Students can show off pets, they could introduce family members, they could show you where they like to read, etc. So what an amazing opportunity that we have to capitalize on in this situation. Your student might also pick up on things that they can see in your background, which would lead to clues about what you enjoy. So they might notice something about the artwork on your wall, or maybe your pet makes an experience, or your child. So again, just think of these not as stumbling blocks, but as stepping stones to build more connections. If you're not using screen sharing, just always make sure to state what page number you're on and what section of the IEP you're looking at. Make sure to minimize the educational jargon and acronyms, and use language that's parent and student friendly. Be sure to include the parent in the discussion throughout the meeting because they're the ones that know their child best. I'm going to have Nissan chime in here for just a moment. He has a few things he wanted to add.
Sure. Thank you, Sharon. So the IP linking form, I-4, contains a family engagement section that includes in part, and I'll quote, connecting parent-family to learning activities, end of quote. The current school closure situation, where families spend a lot of time together at home, provides an opportunity for staff to connect parent to student learning activities. So when addressing the family engagement component at virtual IEP meeting, teachers can provide parents with fun, game-type learning activities to engage with their children. Recent research by Karen Mapp from the Harvard Graduate School of Education points out that when parents are connected to students' learning activities, reading and math achievement score increased by 10 to 20 percentage points. Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you, Nissan. So also throughout the IEP meeting, you also want to use clarification and verification techniques. So just asking the parents, does this match your understanding, or do you see the same strengths or concerns? Just be aware of your body language and facial expressions, and also look for nonverbal cues from the parents as well. If you see that they seem anxious or uncomfortable, you may need to adjust your approach, and this is also something you want to coach other team members on prior to the IEP meeting as well.
All right, so we're gonna let you add some ideas here. What are other ways you could keep IEP meeting participants engaged in a virtual IEP meeting? And as you're typing in those ideas, I invite any of our contributors to just share some quick reflections.
Hey, this is Letha. So something that we do often, and I know Jill, working more so at the high school, does this a lot too, is we will kind of build a slide presentation, and it's kind of what we consider still in draft format, but it's where all team members start to address and kind of list out some of the student strengths and concerns. If we're having phone conversations with parents prior to an IEP meeting, we'll jot down those concerns as well. But most importantly, if we have a student that is willing to help kind of create that IEP meeting, we allow that student to also help write on those IEP slides ahead of time. And then that way, when we have the IEP meeting, that actually kind of helps to foster that communication. The student sometimes will pop in and read specific slides he or she created to kind of tell more about himself. So that's been a really great way to allow the student to be a part of that IEP team, especially if you have a student that's older. And something else that I do too, because I work mostly at the elementary and the middle school level, is I try to make sure that I am being as informative as possible. So if I have an initial IEP, I make sure to use the IEP forms, and I'll use the drawing tools that we have within our platform to highlight specific areas. I want parents to know specifically what's being asked in those IEP forms, and then the information that we will be putting into those IEP forms. So, typically those initial IEPs do take a little bit longer, but that's just to make sure parents are comfortable with what those IEP forms have.
All right. Now Tim is going to be speaking about preparing for the roles and responsibilities of team members that are unique to virtual meetings.